All right, now what I'd like to talk about is specifically the dimensions around the B notch and the C notch, right? So if you look at how this goes together, right, the B goes inside of A, right, when you're assembling it, and you will set it flush like this, and then slide the T notch the C in, and then lock it down, right? Sliding this down to lock everything together. So what I want to go through is actually some of the dimensions around A, B, and C. It can be a little tricky to pull apart. Kind of show you this. So specifically, and you'll sort of see this in a second here, but and I covered the tape because this was my prototype, and I realized I didn't need to do a cutout up here. So this thickness on B is equal to the thickness of the wood, right? And you need to try to make this exact as possible, so that the tighter the fit is, when you assemble it, the more the thing holds its shape and doesn't kind of wiggle and sag, and makes the angles on the bottom a lot cleaner. So if you have this as an inch, your thickness of the board is an inch, this should be an inch, and then this thickness up here, which does not need to be rounded, can be straight across, just need to be that same thickness. Because when they come together, it'll come together like this and then slide down. And it only needs to go down that thickness. So you only need to have the thickness of this notch, which is 1 inch, cut up here. Okay. And then on your C piece, this profile here is the profile of your A piece, right? And it's basically the same way we cut it out on, we did a profile of A, we're going to cut out and do the template here. This notch down here is your thickness of your B piece, right? So 1 inch, right? This thickness needs to be the thickness of your board, right? Which is 1 inch, right? And then you're going to knock off the rest. So you probably question, why do I need the notch? And if you look online, there's different derivatives of this design. Some of the derivatives have the total width of the board is 3 times the thickness of the board, right? And if you do it that style, you won't need to cut this notch out, okay? Because it'll round over and it'll be a perfect fit. But if I liked the wider look for my piece, so I did need to remove this extra. So if you have a wider piece, right, you like that style, you just need to have this distance from this edge up to here equal to your thickness, and then you can just notch out the rest and it'll fix. So again, on C, this thickness is the width of your B board, because it'll fit in like this. This cutout is the exact profile of your A board. This thickness up here is the width of the board, B, which is also the same thickness here and here. So that gives you dimensions for A, B, and C of how to cut those out. So, and again here it can be flat across. It doesn't need to be rounded like I had before. So just straight up and in. And then your height obviously is centered in the middle up here, the depth you go in. So, okay. So now I want to show the actual, after measuring and marking, just sort of, again, to emphasize the actual cuts, right? We have the A board, and this is the pattern of the B board cut out, centered both the width of the board and the length of the board. Here's your B cut, right? And the thickness here is going to be the thickness of your C board. I think we talked about. Basically, it's the 1 inch, and that's also 1 inch, right? And this is centered on the width of the board, and then this is centered along the length of the board. So there's your mid spot right there, right? And then your C board, again, this is your profile of your B board. I'm sorry, of your A board. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Of your A board right there. This is your width of the B board. And then up here, which I've also blacked out, that'll be your notch, your sort of remainder notch that you have to knock out. I typically will wait until the very end because I don't want to overcut it. I want to be as tight fit as possible. So I'll just kind of see where I need to cut it at the very end. So those are 3 cuts. I'm not going to actually show drilling those out, right? What I'll end up doing is cutting this end and this end out with Forstner bits, and then trying to waste some of the middle, and then perhaps coming in with a router bit or some sort of handsaw to trim that out. I'll cut this out with a table saw, and then probably this stuff with waste it with a bandsaw. And then here, I'll cut these 2 ends with the Forstner bit again, and then knock this middle out with the table saw, just having this board stood up on its edge. So I want to give one tip here on drilling out this Forstner bit. Make sure before you drill it out that you've checked with a square to make sure that the widest point of the bit, right, if your bit perhaps isn't perfectly cylindrical, is it just on the inside, barely on the inside, if not just touching the pencil mark, both on the outside edge, and then also on the radius, but then also, you know, here on the edge, that you mark those 2 out. So double check that just with a straight edge, because you're not trying to take out the pencil mark, because the pencil mark was on the outside of the board when you traced it. So that what you're really looking for is just to touch the pencil line or be on the inside of the pencil line when you drill it out. Also, do make sure that your board is very secure as best you can, so that it doesn't wobble or move out on you when you drill. So let me just talk about, I guess, my choice of technique on cleaning up the waste from the Forstner bit and getting that stuff all squared. I had looked at on some other times using a template with a router bit, or even here taking a router bit and running it down the edge. And just because of the 1-inch thickness of this board, it just wasn't as easy to do with a router bit, and probably a lot more risk that I might damage the workpiece as just simply taking a flush edge sort of piece of scrap wood here, securing it to my table here, and then I'll just take my chisel and come here, and I'll just have that straight cut, and I'll just clean this up and then flip it over and do the other side. So that's just how I'm going to go through and clean all these edges up on all this. In the last section, I was about to start straightening out piece A. This is actually piece C here, but trying to clean this up and then get it in to fit, get piece B to fit in. I've got to fit in. I did run into some tightness on the radius, and what I found that instead of trying to take it off with a file or sand that radius, is just to run it back over to the router bit and just tighten that up a little bit, shrink it up a little bit, and it'll fit a lot easier. I think that's where you'll typically have tightness versus on the top or bottom with the thickness. So now that I've got that in and that's all set, I'll basically repeat this chiseling out on C, and then I'm ready to move the table saw and make my cuts on C and back on B.